it's Dorothy Guining with Scrapbooking Quebec. In this video, I'm participating in Janet Fritz's monthly YouTube collaboration, Stretch the Sketch. In this series, we start with a 12 by 12 sketch and then we alter it. We either shrink it or we stretch it. You'll find links to all the other participants below, so be sure to check them out. Here's a sketch we're using in November, and my plan is to stretch it into a double page 6-photo spread. So here's what I'm going to be using. It's the Sweater Weather Collection, an exclusive one from the October 2021 Hip Kit Club. I also have leaf dies from the very same collection. And before starting, I want to let you know what I'm thinking at this point. This sketch is a dream for mixed media artists, of which I am not. Also, it features one small photo, and I'm mostly a multi-photo scrapbooker. So for those reasons, I'm going to be using this sketch as a jumping off point only. And my inspiration is that giant circle. So my plan is to stretch it to the left. Where you see that square, I'm going to be adding 2 photos instead of 1, and I'm also going to add more photos on the left-hand page. And the area on the right, I'm going to be copying some of those elements, but I will be switching up the placement a bit. So let's get started. Here's what's on my desk. I have a frame-style foundation across 2 pages with 4 sheets of paper, and I gutted 2 of them. I did round the corners on the outside of that white paper. I did mat 4 photos. I have 6 photos that I trimmed down, but I matted only 4 of them. I'm showing you the paper that I've selected, and I also brought in that striped paper. That's from the Paige Evans Bungalow Lane collection. I end up using it. I wasn't sure at the beginning. I have a bunch of scraps here because I do have some leaves I'll be punching out. And also I have the sketch handy, of course, and I have a tray full of embellishments. So the first thing I'm going to do is cut out that circle there. And I'm using the custom cutting system from Creative Memories, the jumbo circle with the red blade. You see the sketch there, it's in the top left right now. It's not going to stay there for long. Like I mentioned, it's just a jumping off point for me. So I cut out that jumbo circle, and now what I'm going to cut out are some rings. If you look at the sketch, there are like stitching lines around the circle or some kind of mixed media. What I'm going to do is cut out some paper rings. I'm going to do this slowly because later on I do it for 2 more circles off screen. So this is the only time you're going to see me do this. What I do is I take the blade that is the furthest away from the template, and in this case it's the blue blade. It makes the biggest circle, and I do 1 cut around. So I peel it away, but without moving the template, I come in with the second blade, the next blade in line. It's the green blade. So I cut around, and it's going to cut me a very narrow, it's about 1/8 of an inch, I think, of a ring of paper. Without moving the template still, I'm coming in with the next blade, which is the red one, the smallest blade, and I cut around again. So that's going to create yet again another ring, just a little bit smaller. So now I have 2 rings to play with later on. And like I mentioned, I do that later on off camera for 2 more circles. That's why I wanted to really show you how I did it there. Now what you see me doing is cutting down some more paper for my foundation page, and I will put measurements for everything I'm doing on the screen when I place these elements on the page. But essentially what I'm cutting here is a narrow, or actually a wide horizontal border that's going to go across the 2 pages. I'm doing that in the yellow paper, and then I'm coming in with this striped paper from the Paige Evans Bungalow Lane collection, and I'm going to cut down 4 narrow strips. Mine are cut at 1 inch, but I will be adhering them behind that yellow paper. So the measurements on the screen for these narrow strips are for the visible page parts only. So now what I'm going to show you is how I plan to set up my 2 pages. So The circle is going to go in the middle, not exactly in the middle. It's going to be more towards the right than the left. That yellow horizontal border is going to go across the middle of the two pages, and then I'm slipping in those narrow striped papers at the top of the yellow paper and at the bottom. And those rings are going to be kind of loosely adhered around that jumbo circle in the middle. What I'm going to do right now is cut down this jumbo circle. And what I'm doing is just making sure that one side is significantly larger than the other. I don't want it to be equal on both sides. So the circle actually on the left-hand side measures about 3 3/4 inches. So now what you see me doing is adhering the striped strips of paper to the top and bottom of those yellow borders. And you may notice I did cut down that yellow border because the part that's going to be hidden underneath the circle, I'm not going to adhere it on the foundation page because I could use that paper elsewhere, either on this layout or on another one. So I stopped the camera and continued doing the very same thing. So I have those striped borders adhered to each one of those yellow pieces of paper. I'm adhering that border literally across the middle of the two pages, and then I'm adhering that circle bumped up towards the middle of the layout, so bumped up in the middle of the two pages. Once that's down, then I got to adhere those rings, and that proves to be probably the most difficult part of this entire project. So like I mentioned, I just kind of want them loosely placed around this circle. So I went and got myself a pencil and I'm just marking the area where I'm cutting them. And the adhesive I will be using to adhere this is Sticky Specs. It's an adhesive by Ecstasy Crafts, and basically that yellow paper that you saw a moment ago has adhesive on it. So if you have a fine or detailed piece, you can place it on top of that yellow paper and it picks up the adhesive. So I adhered the two on the left-hand side, and I'm doing the same on the right, but because these rings are so narrow, they're very flexible. So I had a hard time kind of lining them up. They're not perfect, but they will do, put it that way. So now that that's done, I am going to place my photos on the page to give you an idea how I plan to adhere them. So the first two vertical photos there, I will be adhering on that border. And then what I'm going to do is adhere those 4 horizontal photos, 2 on the left page and 2 on the right. In a moment, I'm going to come in and show you something, because basically all of those photos and the photo mats, I used stitched rectangle dies from Stampin' Up to cut them out. Now you probably don't see it very well here, but each one of those photos was cut with a stitched rectangle die. So there is an embossed stitching around the outside of each one of those photos. And then I used the larger die, the same stitched rectangle die, to cut out the photo mats. And that's what I'm showing you right now. Anyway, it just adds a nice little finish. Obviously not necessary, but if you do have stitched dies, it does add a little bit of interest to your photos. So now what I'm going to do is speed up the film again and adhere these 4 photos down. Again, my idea here is to basically center them. I'm making sure as well that there's not a huge space between the photo and the middle of the page, because I don't want there to be a big gap there. Now, once all of this is down, I am going to have a look at that sketch again, because on the sketch there is another circular element on the page. That one there, I just pointed it out. So I'm getting out my custom cutting system again from Creative Memories, but this time I'm using making 2 smaller circles. Again, I'll put measurements for what I'm doing on the screen. The smallest one, I didn't cut out a full circle because I'm only going to need part of a circle. My tripod just fell there, so I had to clean up my desk, reset up my tripod. Anyway, like I mentioned earlier, I did cut some more rings off camera. So I did it in that blue paper, the same blue paper that's part of that giant circle in the middle of the page. So I did that for each one of these smaller circles, and I'm just re-explaining how I did that. For each one of these circles, I started by cutting with the blue blade. It's the furthest away from the template. Then I came in with the green one, which created one ring, and without moving the template, I came in with the red one, and for each one of those circles, it gave me 2 rings. Now, before continuing, I want to create a journaling box. On that sketch that you saw earlier, there was a tag there. There was no journaling on it, but I'm assuming it was for journaling. Anyway, what I'm doing is cutting myself out a journaling box. I've got some lined paper. It's from Simple Stories from the Color Vibe collection. One side is wood grain, the flip side is a lined paper. And I used a tab die, an old one from Stampin' Up, just to create a tab at the beginning. And my plan for this is basically to bump up this journaling box to the circle on the left-hand side of the right page. My plan as well is to take the larger of the 2 smaller circles that I cut out and kind of put it again bumped up on that circle in the middle of the page, and the smaller circle is going to go on the left hand page. I just cut it down and I just want it kind of at the beginning of the layout there. So now I'm adhering all of this down. I'm going to adhere those rings, and again, this is the toughest part of the layout as far as I'm concerned, adhering these rings down. Not as bad for the small ones. The larger ones were definitely more difficult. It probably would have been easier for me to do some mixed media or some stitching or something like that. Anyway, once this is all in place, then what I'm going to do is start creating embellishment clusters. And what I did off camera is I took those dies that I showed you earlier, those leaf dies from the October 2021 hip kit, and I cut out a bunch of leaves. This die set comes with 5 leaves, so I used 4 of them and I cut them out in 4 different colors. That's what I'm showing you right now. And so I have a pile of them. You can also see I have some alphas there, and I put my title on wax paper. That's what I'm showing you now. Those alphas are actually from the September 2021 Hip Kit Club. So my title is Autumn Walks, and in the top left, I want a repetition of that. I want year 2, but the number 2 is significantly smaller than the letters. So that causes me a little bit of grief later on, but I'm going to worry about that later. Right now, what I'm doing is building a leaf cluster kind of in the bottom right and more or less on the right side. It's going to be quite big here, and I'm creating this like I would if I were creating a bouquet of flowers. I'm coming in with the bigger pieces and then filling in the empty spots with smaller pieces, and some of them are longer, and I'm just trying to create something interesting with these leaves. So that's what you see me doing right now, and I will do the very same thing in the top left corner, basically not the top left corner, but the left of that grouping of 4 photos. You'll see what I mean in a minute. I want that cluster to be not quite as significant as the one on the bottom right. So now I'm going to speed it up because this is just repeating it, the same thing over and over again. So there I go, up in the top left area there, creating another embellishment cluster. Where it becomes difficult is when it's time to actually adhere them to the page, because it's hard for me to remember exactly where I had placed everything in the first place. I'm also making sure that that journaling box, which doesn't span all the way over to the photos, I don't want that empty space between the journaling box and the photo to be visible. So I was making sure that in that area, the leaves were really filled in. So now I'm coming in and adhering the pieces. At first, I tried not to move any of the leaves and just come in with the adhesives, but I ended up abandoning that idea and having to remove the leaves, and I'm just trying to go by memory. But again, the idea is just to build a cluster like you would a bouquet of flowers. Then what I'm going to do is start adhering the title down, but I don't make you watch that. I'm just adhering it literally bumped up underneath that striped blue and white line of paper there. And when I continue adhering that title off camera, I do the same thing for that leaf cluster over there on the left-hand page. So now that's all down, but I still don't know exactly what I'm going to do with the title over there on the left-hand page. Like I mentioned, the number 2 is smaller. I didn't have the letters to spell out year 2, and it is kind of a story about year 2 because these autumn walks, discovering beautiful areas in our neighborhood, so to speak, in our vicinity, kind of started during COVID. And even though things have opened up more and we have more freedom, we continue doing these walks this year. So that's kind of what this story is about. I'm just showing you the sketch there and how I basically followed it and altered it. And essentially you can see the circle there. You can see I've added 2 photos, and you can see that whole circle tag title area. I bumped it up more towards that circle as opposed to over on the far right. So I do have to do something with that title. I am really contemplating what I want to do at this point. So I do like the number 2 underneath the word year because I find it's just less obvious that the number 2 is smaller. I have these puffy stickers from the Hip Kit Club Sweater Weather collection, which I absolutely love. Right now I'm cutting out one of the titles. It says "This Story," which I really like. I actually really like it there on the vertical over on the right, but it doesn't end up staying there because this empty space is created between the tab and that title. And you can see me now trying to fill it in with leaves, but then I don't like it. I feel like I'm junking up my page, or it's starting to get too full at this point. So I take away the leaves, I put them back. I decide to leave it on the side for a bit because I can't decide, and I'm going to adhere my title, year 2. Again, I don't make you watch all of that. And once that's down, I do have a few more finishing touches I have to do. You're going to see me go in with some foam adhesive, and I end up adding a little bit of foam adhesive under some of those leaves, mostly the oak leaves because they are more filled in, and that just adds a little bit of texture and dimension within those embellishment clusters. I'm still fooling around with that title there that says "This Story." Now, actually, I prefer it on the vertical along the side of the journaling box, but that empty space was really bothering me. So I end up taking a little word title that says "Together" from that puffy title sheet that I showed you earlier, and I put that in the tab, and then I put "This Story" underneath. Again, it's my second favorite spot, but I didn't like the empty space that was created between the tab and the title, so I guess I prefer it this way. Now at this point, all I did was I added a heart underneath the word "Autumn Walks." I wanted to put something up there by year 2, but I couldn't decide, so I just left it. And who knows, maybe in the layout share at the end of the month, there will be something there. And all I did off camera was my journaling. So that is it. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. I must say, I wasn't thrilled with this sketch when I first saw it. For that reason, I used it as a jumping off point. But by using a sketch that was kind of outside my comfort zone, even though I didn't touch mixed media, it did encourage me to try something different. There's no way I would have done something like this on my own. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, I would be thrilled if you did. And if you are a subscriber, thank you very much. Don't forget to check out the other participants. I'm sure there are some amazing pages out there because some of them are super mixed media artists. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon on YouTube. Bye-bye.